Hello everyone, I'm Matt from Those Damn Guys, and today I'm going to give you my review of DuckTales Remastered for the Wii U. DuckTales Remastered is simply, well, that. It's a remastered version of the original release for both the Nintendo Entertainment System and Game Boy. This time around it was developed by WayForward in conjunction with Disney and Capcom, and it seems to be getting mixed reviews by critics across the board. With that in mind, I'm going to tell you why I think it's worth your $15. Gameplay-wise, there's nothing new here. If you've played the original, then you've been around the block. You play as Scrooge McDuck on an adventure to find priceless hidden treasures across the world to once again amass a fortune. However, this time around the story's been expanded to fill in some of the plot holes and to cover some of the questions you may have been left with the first time around. As you did in the NES version, you really only have to worry about two buttons. You have jump, and then your cane. This is your home now. Feel comfortable here because you will be using these two buttons constantly throughout the game. In fact, they're the only two buttons to use in the game, other than the D-pad. You can use your cane to attack enemies, jump over obstacles, and whack rocks. All things rich ducks typically do. I'd like to make one note though, in that none of this ever really gets boring for reasons I'll be listing later in the review. You'll be tasked with minor puzzles, team up with characters from the cartoon, and be forced to fight in some decently challenging boss battles. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there are typically only three types of enemies throughout the game's levels. One that flies across the screen, one that drops on you, and one that patrols the ground areas. Mind you, these are all skinned differently for all the different levels you play on, and it can seem a little bit redundant at times. Although don't think this ruins the overall gameplay by any means. I had a blast during my playthrough, perfectly timing my bounces between enemies, hunting for secrets, and grabbing as much treasure as possible. Speaking of treasure, this time around you'll be using your treasure to unlock bonuses in Scrooge's gallery. The unlockables consist of concept art, character bios, music, and some footage from the TV series. This is all fine and dandy if you're into this sort of thing, but to me it sort of made me feel like money was useless. Plus, you just can't unlock whatever you feel like willy-nilly, as the game forces you to spend a certain amount of money before you can unlock the next type of bonus. Inconveniently enough, the music section is near the bottom of the list, which is essentially the best part. Personally, I would like to have seen the level of your money in the vault raise as you gain loot. Either way, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I just feel like it could have been laid out a little bit better. Let's take a look at the visuals. This game looks fantastic. Capcom decided to combine crisp, animated characters with 3D backdrops and environments. I was blown away by how smooth the animation on the characters look, and it only looks better in HD. Even the bosses utilize animation and 3D using both foreground and background to their advantage. This actually made boss battles a little bit more interesting and gave you a little bit more to look at as you're playing through the game. I'd also like to throw out there that there are at least two parts to each level, so the look of the game is constantly changing and keeping things fresh. A+ Capcom, this is great stuff. Alright, you made it this far and finally reached the best part. I'm going to borrow a word from the great Peter Molyneux and say the game's audio is phenomenal. I'm not even sure how to describe the soundtrack. It's like a mix of orchestration, 8-bit, and dubstep crammed together to make one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. Iconically, the Moon theme seems to be everyone's favorite from the original, and I think those fans will have no issue transitioning over to the modern remix. The sound effects didn't do much for me, but the voice acting was far above my expectations. They ended up getting the original voice cast from the TV show to reprise their roles and dub the entire game. Some people seem to have an issue with this, but I think it only adds to the story and immersion. At times, some of Scrooge's little sayings would get old, but I recommend drowning that out and focus on the soundtrack instead because it is awesome. I'm gonna keep this short. There is none. The final verdict. How am I gonna rate it? Does it suck? Is it great? Well, here's where I'm gonna tell you what's bad about the game. Simply, nothing. This game is great. With all the mentioned elements combined and so fantastically remastered, this makes a very entertaining game to run through. And even though there's no multiplayer, do not mistake this game for something that can only be enjoyed by yourself. The story is entertaining enough to enjoy it with family and friends. I took it easy my first time through and ended up with a 2-hour and 45-minute playthrough. So for the price of a movie, you get your entertainment's worth. And it's something I can see myself going back to. You would have to be crazy not to pick this one up. Again, I played on the Wii U, but there's nothing particularly amazing in this iteration, so buy it on your platform of choice.